for being here, and let's get started.
Thank you so much, June. Good afternoon, everyone, or good day, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, as June was saying, this is a topic that I've definitely dedicated quite a lot of time. So I'm looking forward to hearing your questions at the end. And before we get started, just want to remind you, this is all about you. So anything that I share or is more the theory, but it's all about you making it your own. And I'll have some question prompts for you in between as well, just so that you get to focus on your own lifestyle behaviors as well. So here's what we're going to go through today. Hormone matters. I'll explain why I'm talking about hormones in a bit. So we're going to talk about the biochemical mechanisms of well-being, the importance of sleep, movement, and nutrition, which basically is our lifestyle, right? And then, unfortunately, whenever we talk about lifestyle, I have to talk about stress. So we're going to talk about the impact of mental and physical stress and what the subconscious mind has to do with it. And then it's, again, all over to you to create your well-being blueprint and how you can put things into action. So a little bit about myself. June already introduced myself. My name is Natasha or Tash. I am currently doing a master's in psychological medicine and mental health, but I also have a degree in sports and exercise science and medicine. I'm an author. My book, Tune Into Your Happiness Frequency, really discusses how we can create our happier lifestyle. And of course, I'm a life coach, a wellness coach. I work with corporate clients as well as with individual clients, leadership training, corporate wellness strategies, all of that. And yeah, I'm really passionate about individuals leading more or making more conscious decisions when it comes to the way we lead our lives. So lifestyle behaviors. So here you have a few things that you might have heard, and these things can be quite overwhelming, right? Because we get to know about all these things that we should be doing, and often we want to do, and sometimes we don't want to do. But how do we actually manage this together with our busy lifestyles? Well, that's the really big question here. So let's dive into it. So as I already mentioned, the aim of this workshop is to provide you with the knowledge and tools to create a sustainable lifestyle for yourself that sustains you even in the most stressful times. Because unfortunately, we cannot always change how our lives are organized and structures around us. We can just change or be more conscious about how we deal with it. And so leading it on to you, and feel free to drop something into the chat or just think about it for a moment. What are the biggest stressors that you are facing in your everyday life? And that can be your personal life or your work life. All right. So for me, it's balancing looking after my son and looking after myself. And I'm sure a lot of parents can relate to that. But let's move on. Hormone matters. So, as I said, you might be surprised that I'm talking about hormones in this presentation that's about lifestyle, but hopefully it will become more apparent as we go through it. So whenever I talk about lifestyle, I like to talk about happiness as well, because really that's what we're all aiming for, right? And you might have heard of so-called happiness hormones. Now, these happiness hormones are actually neurotransmitters, but let's not be too specific about it. So we have serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. And these are all quite nicely linked to our lifestyle. And we come to that again in just a moment. So these happy hormones or neurotransmitters can actually help us to feel better. And not only do we feel better with them, we also are better. We're healthier when we have a positive balance of these hormones and neurotransmitters. What neurotransmitters are that they are like chemical messengers that go between different parts of the body and help the communication within our body. So they're quite important for us to function properly. they can transfer messages that are positive as well as messages that are on the negative side. So for example, when we come to stress, we will be talking about cortisol, and that's having a more negative impact than the ones that we're talking about right now. So which of these make us feel good and how do they make us feel good? So first of all, when we talk about happiness, we need to be a little bit more specific about what makes us as individuals feel happy. And that can be very, very different. So if we're asking a few different people, what is their ultimate state of happiness, we might get very conflicting answers, such as some people are happiest when they're together with their families, with their loved ones, when they're engaged in social activities, while other people are the happiest when they're by themselves, they're relaxing and they're reading a book. So this already shows us that we all have a different makeup of our happiness, and therefore we might have different needs for different of these new neurotransmitters at different times or stages in our life as well. And that's why it's important to know a little bit about them. So serotonin is a mood stabilizer. It's responsible for our well-being and for our happiness. And serotonin is so important that it's the key component of most modern antidepressant medication. So these antidepressant medications are actually affecting the availability of serotonin in our brain. Then we have dopamine, and dopamine is responsible for the feelings of pleasure. It has a motivational role, and it's our reward system as well. And some people are more dopamine dependent. So if you are someone who always likes to be on the go, who is always going after the next achievement, who feels good when they're slightly pressured and stressed, and who really feels good when they have then achieved something despite having that stress beforehand, then you might be a little bit more dopamine driven. Then we have oxytocin, responsible for bonding, sensations of bonding, love, and trust. And we have endorphins, which are also called the runner's high, or which are known for the runner's high. And they actually help with pain relief as well. So how do we get them? Now we're coming to the more important part, right? But before we jump forward, so these are all neurotransmitters that you can affect, yeah, which means that you have a great influence over how you feel on an everyday basis. So serotonin. Serotonin, as I said, is extremely important when it comes to happiness and well-being. It regulates our mood. It's involved in our digestion. It regulates sleep and brain function, as well as the circadian rhythm. Now, what is interesting is that gut is to around 95% produced in the gut. Sorry, serotonin is to 95% produced in the gut, which means that we can feel an absence or a disturbed gut bacteria through our levels of serotonin as well. And if you think about it, there's a lot of colloquial sayings that we have that already hint to the fact that we're quite affected by our gut bacteria and the relation to our happiness. So for example, a gut feeling, or this is like a punch in the stomach, or butterflies in the stomach, of course, gut wrenching. Yeah, we have lots of different sayings that hint to that relationship, but now you understand it a little bit better. It's because serotonin is to a large part produced in the gut. It's a lot more interesting, and I could talk about this for a long time, but I'm going to be moving on. Gut bacteria actively stimulate cells for serotonin synthesis, as we just talked about. And then there's the tryptophan important. So tryptophan is a precursor of serotonin. It's an essential amino acid. So it's an amino acid that we need. And again, without enough tryptophan, we're not going to have enough serotonin. And here, our link comes, how can we increase our serotonin levels? Well, by making sure that we have a healthy gut bacteria. How do we do that? By eating a diet that's rich in tryptophan, which is available in, again, it's an amino acid, which is protein. So a lot of the lean protein sources that we have, but also in fish, we have tryptophan, as well as in nuts and quite a few of other healthy carbohydrate or starchy foods. So by eating in a certain way, we can, again, enhance our well-being through tryptophan and then serotonin. Dopamine. So again, I already talked a little bit about dopamine and what it does, the motivational molecule we like to call it. So dopamine is involved in motor control and cognitive function, the brain's motivation and reward system, decision-making and impulse control, memory and attention, and then also in maternal and reproductive behaviors. Dopamine is a key player in a lot of brain diseases or brain health diseases, such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer. So it has been shown that very often there is a lack in dopamine, and also in ADHD. So when we're treating patients with ADHD, the medication will be enhancing dopamine availability in the body. And there's also a different line of antidepressant medication that again affects dopamine levels in the body. So how can we affect our dopamine level? Now, this is a little bit more difficult. We can't actually eat dopamine. There are supplements that will be encouraging the production of a dopamine in the body. However, here we're going a little bit more into our mindset. And I already mentioned that certain people or some people are more dopamine driven than others. And again, it's very easy to check that for yourself. Just question your everyday behavior. How do you cope with stress? Do you like stress? Do you like the challenge? Do you like to be always on the go? Do you find it hard to relax? Do you not like to relax, maybe as well? And then think about how you can now set yourself tasks that are actually easy to achieve, because especially if you're dopamine driven and you're having very high expectations for yourself, you're an all or nothing kind of person who always wants to achieve everything, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And that in turn will mean that you're never reaching your full dopamine levels. So that's quite important to keep in mind on how you can maybe create a mindset shift that helps you to increase your dopamine levels. Then the endorphins, so the runner's high. And the good news is you don't have to be running. So I personally hate running. It's not going to happen, but you get a nice amount of endorphins even from walking, from any kind of activity that brings your heart rate up a little bit. So cardiovascular fitness is what we're looking for here. Whereas, by the way, dopamine is more something that is engaged through strength training. Yeah. So if you imagine yourself being in the gym and breaking a new personal best when it comes to lifting a certain amount of weights, that's definitely something that encourages dopamine production. But the endorphins we get with the cardiovascular fitness, so that's a little bit different here. And that's, again, anything that brings your heart rate up, and ideally over a prolonged period of time. And endorphins, of course, are very powerful when it comes to boosting our mood. You might know that walking or exercising is definitely recommended when you're battling with depression, but even just to have our everyday low mood, going for a walk is definitely a good way to induce some sense of euphoria and good mood. And sorry, I skipped oxytocin here. So that was the fourth one that I mentioned before, the fourth neurotransmitter. Oxytocin, responsible for bonding and for trust. So this is a very simple one. By simply reaching out to friends, to loved ones, especially if we're not feeling well, and rather than keeping it all in for ourselves, sharing about that. And if you don't want to share, that's also fine, but simply reaching out, having that sense of community and doing some activities together is already going to increase your oxytocin levels. So the importance of sleep, movement, and nutrition when it comes to our happiness is, of course, huge. If I ask you simply, does your sleep quality affect your stress level? Answer is probably yes, right? So if you're not sleeping well, are you more or less stressed? But we can also turn this question around. So if you're very stressed, does that affect your sleep quality? Probably as well. And then how does movement or exercise affect your stress level? And again, how does your stress level affect your willingness, your ability, or just the volume of you exercising. And then we can ask the same with eating. So how does eating affect our stress levels? And how do our stress levels affect eating behavior? And now, of course, this is a tricky one because actually, especially when it comes to eating, I always find that eating or nutrition, the way we eat, for a lot of people is a great source of stress, because many of us do know that we're not eating well, we're not eating right, but unfortunately we have to eat. We have to eat every day, several times a day. And so we need to be very conscious about how we're nurturing our body and our mind. But we'll come to that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. So as we can see here, sleep, movement, nutrition are all very tightly connected. And again, they're connected to stress as well. As you know, we're going to be talking about stress. So let's dive into sleep. Sleep, in my opinion, is the biggest and often overlooked mental health game changer there is. If you sleep well, everything is better. You're physiologically healthier because as we're sleeping, there's a lot of changes that are going on in the body, a huge hormonal response. It's really your body's way of resetting itself, which then doesn't just affect our physical body, but also our mind, of course. And a lot of lifestyle habits that we have, unfortunately, minimize the amount of restful sleep and restorative sleep that we have, which then in turn doesn't set us up for a good day from the next morning. So for example, if you're very, very stressed, again, we're coming to stress in a moment, but if you're very stressed, your heart rate is elevated. So chances are that your heart rate doesn't drop as quickly as we would like it to drop when you're starting to sleep. And then, of course, many of us lead very, very busy lives where we're finding it very hard to have that time in the evening to engage in a proper pre-sleep or evening routine, which means, again, we're doing a lot of things in the evening, late in the evening, that we should have been doing earlier during the day, but we can't because we're too busy. So just some pointers on how to de-stress and improve sleep quality. And you might be doing some of them already. And if you have any great tips, please feel free to write them into the chat box as well. So meditation, breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation. This is a great one. If you don't know it, it simply means to engage muscles as much as you can. So for example, bringing your hands into really, really tight fists, taking a nice deep breath in. Feel free to follow along. Take a deep breath in. And then as you exhale, allowing your hands, your fingers to relax. And you should feel a little tingling sensation now in your fingertips. And that just shows you how it has increased the blood circulation in your fingertips as well. And you can do that whilst you're laying down. It doesn't just need to be the hands, so you can engage all kind of muscles, holding the tension for a few seconds, taking that deep breath in, and then with the exhalation, just completely relaxing the body. So that's a great one, especially if you're struggling from neck and shoulder pain or any other kind of tension that you've been carrying with you throughout the day. Keeping a consistent sleep-wake schedule, I cannot stress how important this is. Your body likes routine. That's with sleep as well as with nutrition. And it just helps your body to set its circadian rhythm. And which means that if you sleep at the same time almost every day, then it will just be easier for your body to get into that sleep state as well. Of course, limiting caffeine, avoiding heavy meals close to bedtime, avoiding alcohol. Again, alcohol just raises your heart rate and it can avoid the body to drop into your resting heart rate. Keeping a cool and dark room, problem solving. So this is a great one. I'm sure some of you know the feeling of waking up in the middle of the night and overthinking something, or not being able to fall asleep because you're overthinking something. And so having an active practice of problem solving, which can be either writing things down that you need to do the next day, that you don't want to forget before you go to sleep, or even having a notepad close to your bed. So should you wake up in the middle of the night, you just write things down and then you try and let it go and going back to bed. And then, of course, aerobic exercise, because the endorphins also help with your with the alignment of your circadian rhythm. So how is your sleep routine? Just have a quick think about it. And maybe also let me know what are the biggest issues you have when it comes to your sleep routine. I'm gonna have chat is disabled. Okay, so I'm just having a look through the Q&A. Yeah, I think I'm going to come to them later on. All right. Good. Movement and nutrition. So I like to talk about movement more than about exercise, simply because I always say everybody has to move, has to be moved, but not everybody has to exercise. So if you exercise or not depends on a variety of health concerns that you might have. So of course you might have to exercise to be healthier and fitter. And you might want to exercise to look a certain way and to feel a certain way. However, movement is super essential and can be an absolute game changer when it comes to your overall health and well-being. So again, including into that lifestyle behavior, how much do you move on an average day? And this is your step count. This is how often do you get up? How much time do you spend seated or laying down in one go? And how much are you able to move freely as well? So if there are a lot of movement limitations, if you're feeling yourself not able to move as freely as you would like, then that is an issue as well, and definitely something that can be aided again with exercise. However, if you think about it, so movement is so much more important than exercise because your movement is what you do all of your waking day. Whereas exercise is something that you do once a day. If you work out every day, how many of us work out every day? Hopefully no one, because you shouldn't be working out at a high intensity every single day as well. And then it's just for a limited period of time. So if you are sedentary the rest of the time and then you work out 3 times a week for 1 hour, it's better than not working out and 3 times a week for 1 hour, but it's not as effective as increasing your overall everyday movement. But again, as we discussed earlier, so exercise can definitely increase a beneficial hormonal balance. And now talking about nutrition. So stress affects the body's use of calories. And so it affects our metabolism. And that's important to understand because when we're stressed, again, I'm talking about it in a little bit more detail later on, but when we're stressed, all of our physiological system is working at an intensified state. So our heart rate is up. I already mentioned that when it comes to sleep. Our blood pressure can be up as well. And blood circulation is a little bit increased. So the body is a little bit more heated. We're a little bit more tense and tight. And all of this means that we are in the need of more nutrients, nutritious food, so calories and nutritious food. And also when we have a lot of stress, and especially chronic stress, there is a lot of toxicity in the body. And again, for the body to combat that and to regulate that, it also needs nutrients, protective nutrients that can help the body to defend itself against the negative effects of stress. But as you might have concluded already from my previous question, how are we affected by stress when it comes to our nutrition? Most of us eat worse when we're stressed, right? So we might be eating more, so we might get more calories, but chances are we're not eating good quality calories. not eating food that is quite dense in nutrients. So that means that we need more, but we get less, right? Which, of course, can cause a lot of long-term issues. So, bringing it back to you, do you eat mindfully? Do you think about what you eat? And I don't mean always, but a good amount of times. Do you move consciously? And what do I mean by that? So if you think about it, many of us spend a lot more time thinking about or learning about areas that are related to our work, for example, than we do learning about our own body. I mean, you're all here, which is amazing. So you're spending the time, you're making an effort to learn about leading a healthy lifestyle. But it's something that affects us each and every day, right? So eating mindfully, moving consciously are quite paramount to good health. And one of my key messages for today is for you to really feel empowered and enabled to do this, to be more mindful and to move more consciously when it comes to your lifestyle behaviors. And I know it's very difficult because here it is, stress, right? We all lead very, very stressful lives. I saw some questions in the chat about going to bed late, how to improve health naturally. And it all comes back to taking control over some of your lifestyle behaviors. And again, I'm fully aware that you cannot take full control over everything. But I think quite often we could be in charge a lot more, and we should be in charge a lot more. But we find excuses or we prioritize other things over ourselves. So hopefully, after I've talked a little bit more about stress, you will see the importance for being a lot more conscious about your lifestyle and also about the fact that you and your body deserve to be very, very conscious and you deserve to de-stress. So the impact of physical and mental stress. We talked a little bit about the hormonal response that we have or that is triggered when we have stress. Now, first of all, stress is a very normal part of life, and our bodies are absolutely able to deal with stress. However, because of the lifestyles we're leading, we are often in a situation of chronic stress. And what the body and the mind really need is phases of de-stress. We come to that on the next slide where I'll show how that should look like. So we have this hormonal cascade, especially cortisol, other stress hormones, which obviously are in contrast to the good hormones and neurotransmitters that we discussed earlier. So again, remember there was your serotonin, which is affected by the way we eat. It was your dopamine, which is related to your mindset and how you deal with stress and stressful situations. We had your endorphins, which are a result of exercise, especially cardiovascular exercise. And we had oxytocin, which is the bonding and trust molecule. So the physiological effects of chronic stress are cardiovascular, accelerated heart rate, respiratory, increased breath rate, vascular, so we have a dilation of blood vessels in the arms and legs. Why is this? Because your body is literally in a fight or flight response. So your body is preparing for the worst, which is why it will send more blood into the extremities, which also means that you have digestive issues coming from that. So some people get actually sick when they are in a state of great stress. And you might have seen that or heard of that, or it might happen to you that you're feeling sick to your stomach. Another one of these sayings when you're experiencing stress. So this is because if there is still a lot of food left to digest in your stomach, and now all the blood goes into your arms and legs, your body will want to get rid of what is left in the stomach because it's not digested. It's just disturbing at the moment, and your body wants to be able to prepare for this fight or flight response. So that might explain that relationship to digestive issues with stress as well. And some people are more sensitive to that than others. By the way, the same accounts for exercise. So if you've ever exercised at a very high level, but then you are finding yourself feeling sick, that might be because your body has moved all the blood into the arms and legs and wants to empty the stomach. And we have elevated glucose levels in the bloodstream. So there is a link, a very strong link between diabetes and chronic stress as well. So you can see that this is a quite complex issue when it comes to stress. Yeah, we think of stress as something that, we're all stressed. But really, if you think about it, it affects pretty much everything in your body and your mental health, of course, as well. Yes. So as I mentioned, stress is a normal part of life. And this is what the general adaptation syndrome should look like. So this is quite old. This is from 1950 by Hans Seil. And so normally we find ourselves in good health, homeostasis. Homeostasis simply means balance. And then we have an alarm stage, and then there is a resistance stage. So as you see in the resistance stage, our system goes up, right? So when you are in stage 2, the brightly orange one, you might actually feel quite good because yes, you're fully working, right? And this is why a lot of people actually like stress. They feel good when they're stressed, right? They feel more productive. They feel that they're getting stuff done. They feel like that they're thinking sharper. They're actually smarter. And then we should go, this is what we should be doing. We should go into the exhaustion stage. And this is important because this is where we increase resilience to stress. We have to move through that exhaustion stage. We have to feel really low to then return to homeostasis. And if we were to go through this several times, our homeostasis would be raised. So this is when we have increased our stress resilience. Now, the adaptogens that you see here, adaptogens are anything that helps us combat stress. And this can be on a physiological level, it can be on a mental level, on a psychological level. So on a physiological level, that can be your nutrients, that can be your sleep, that can be your rest and your recovery. And on a psychological level, it can be feeling that you have the resources to deal with the stress. Stress obviously is affected by our history as well. So how much stress have we had in the past will define how resilient you are to deal with any current stressor that's happening. So keep this in mind, please. The exhaustion is something that we need, that is healthy and that we should be going through. Are you addicted to stress? So you might be surprised by this question, but a lot of people are addicted to stress. I'm considering myself a recovering stressaholic for sure. So if you think back to that previous slide, and I mentioned here, if you're in that orange stage, you're going to feel quite good. And how long you feel good here, again, depends on you. It's a quite individual thing. And it does not feel good to go down here, right? We want to avoid this. So it's quite likely for a lot of people to actually want to stay up here and not go here. So I talked about that as well when we spoke about dopamine. So if you're someone who doesn't like to relax because you feel absolutely horrible, bored, almost stupid, I know that's what I used to feel. When I'm in that stage where I'm de-stressing, I feel stupid because suddenly even the most simple tasks seem very difficult and tedious. And it's like my mind, my brain is not working properly. So it gets very easy to get into that stress curve. And unfortunately, we're not being taught that we need to feel that way. sometimes. And I always like to talk about a mental cold. So a mental cold for me is the equivalent to a physical cold. So imagine if you have a cold. Pre-COVID, at least, nobody would would be too worried about it, right? You know, you're just having a cold. You know, this is perfectly normal, and you know you're going to be okay after some time. And you take a rest, maybe take a Panadol, do whatever you need to do, and that's it, and you recover. It's perfectly normal for us to have mental colds as well, because it is not normal for us to be always functioning at the highest level, to be super productive, and to be operating at the pace that we are normally operating, especially in a world where we've been taught to multitask, to function, to be switched on, to be there, to have to produce, to have to communicate, new inputs coming in all the time. This is not normal. Yeah, so feeling low is normal, but it can be very challenging if we don't consider this idea of the mental cold. So keep that in mind. It's okay to have a mental cold. Like with a physical cold, you're going to get over it, but you need to rest. You need to take care of yourself. And at that point, I'm very quickly going to talk about the subconscious mind. So the subconscious is the part of our mind that makes decisions without us needing to actively think about them. It means we're running on autopilot. And I put a slide in because, as I said earlier, I want you to be empowered to make more conscious decisions about your lifestyle, but also to allow yourself to make these decisions and to prioritize your physical and mental health and make your lifestyle choices or changes accordingly. So the subconscious mind is very powerful in this context of lifestyle because, of course, we are greatly shaped by what we have learned growing up, what is accepted by society, what we think is expected of us, and how we should be leading our lives, right? So many of us go more by that than we actually allow ourselves to make our own decisions. I know what I'm saying might be a little bit controversial to some of you. Please know that I'm coming from a very well-meaning point. But I would like you to quickly think about how your ideas, your subconscious ideas, affect your lifestyle, and how much are you taking time for yourself and how much you are prioritizing your own health. Good. So, final part, create your well-being blueprint. So I put a lot of information out there for you. I know it's a lot and it's in a short period of time. But let's try to summarize it and let's try to get you to step into the right direction. So first of all, again, a well-being mindset. I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to actually want to change your lifestyle, to want to prioritize yourself, to practice this element of self-love. And then you can put all the other steps underneath, such as making sure that you have a well-balanced hormone or neurotransmitter situation going on. And of course, also looking carefully into the way you're dealing with stress. And there might be some psychological reasons for why you are not dealing well with stress. But as always, we also need to be able to analyze consciously what belongs into the present moment and what belongs into the past. And if something that happened to you is because of something that has happened, something that happened to you is now affecting how you're handling yourself and how well you're taking care of yourself, then, you know, maybe try to separate the two and just question if this is still relevant, the reason that you had before, or if you're now in a different place where you actually have the power to create your sustainable well-being lifestyle. So coming to that, here are some questions, and I want you to make some commitments for yourself right now. Try to write them down. You don't have to write them into the chat. This is for you. So what is one stressor that you can eliminate? And here I'm going to give you an example because maybe you're saying, well, you know, they're all from outside. So time management is a big stressor, or not having enough time, right? It's a big stressor for many, many people that I work with. But how can we eliminate that? Well, by reminding ourselves that we're in charge. And by actually making commitments to ourselves and prioritizing things that are in our schedule that are for us. So if an appointment with yourself, for example, to go to the gym or to go for a walk, has the same priority, the same importance than a work meeting, then you're not going to skip it, right? But again, we are used to prioritizing other things over ourselves. So often these stressors that I wrote there are things that you can eliminate, or at least you can combat them. So if you're finding now there's no stressors that you can eliminate, maybe you can have mechanisms in place to have more relaxation time. Yeah, if you know that there's a lot of stress, then maybe you need more relaxation time. Make one sleep hygiene commitment. I know there are some questions in the Q&A box. I'm coming to them in a moment, but what is one sleep hygiene commitment that you can make right now? What is one simple step towards mindful nourishment you can take? So if you're not sure about this, to give you a very simple idea, it could be to consider having to write up a meal plan. What are you going to eat for the coming week? And to spend a little bit of time into mindfully thinking about what are you going to eat the next week? Where is your food coming from? What do you need to prepare? And maybe taking some time over the weekend to meal prep. There's the saying, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And that's definitely true when it comes to nutrition. How can you include conscious movement into your day? There's many, many ways. And what is a mindfulness practice for a better mindset that you want to try? So again, write it down for yourself. Okay, we're coming into the questions. Now, before we go there, please, please, please stay in touch. So you have my details there. The QR code also leads you to my Linktree where you have everything. And on the left, this is my book that I wrote. You can get it on Amazon. If you are on Linktree, you can see it there as well. Shipping is a little bit expensive to the UAE. However, there is the Kindle version as well. There is the ebook version. Or you can reach out to me if you would like a printed copy, which I have in the UAE available.